I stood at the edge of the living room, casserole dish still warm in my hands, as laughter spilled from the dining table I'd once called my own. The place card said Grandma Guest, tucked beside a napkin I didn't recognize. My daughter-in-law didn't even look up. "Oh, we thought it might be too loud for you tonight." My son didn't argue, didn't even blink. After decades of bedtime stories, scraped knees, and every holiday under this roof, I'd been demoted, quietly, efficiently, to an outsider with oven mitts. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Her breath brushed my ear. "You're just the babysitter now." Then she smiled like it was kindness. Sophie was stacking little wooden blocks in front of the fireplace, humming a song from preschool. Her knees were covered in those patterned tights she insists on wearing, no matter how cold it gets. I stood behind her, wiping my hands on a dish towel, still tasting the carrot soup I'd rushed to make before Vanessa's arrival. Vanessa leaned down to adjust Sophie's hair ribbon. Unnecessary, but performative. Then she turned toward me, slowly, the way a cat might before it strikes. Her lips barely moved. Her voice, soft, private. "Thank you for keeping her company. You're just the babysitter now." Then she smiled, soft, polite, meant to seem gracious, as if she'd handed me a compliment wrapped in silk. I stood there, towel balled in my fist, not blinking, not breathing. She walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened, calling out, "Ben, the house looks wonderful. You've both done so much." Just the babysitter. Just the babysitter. That phrase echoed like a snapped wire inside my skull. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Not then. Sophie looked up at me and smiled like nothing had shifted in her world. I forced my face into something that wouldn't frighten her. Later, after Vanessa had finished pretending to admire our bookshelf and asked overly intimate questions about our finances, Ben slipped his arm around my waist. He was glowing, proud, like he'd just scored points with his mother for being civilized. "She was in such a good mood," he said, dropping a kiss on my shoulder. "Thanks for making her feel useful." Useful. That's what he thought I'd done. That's what he thought I was doing. I smiled, but it felt wrong. My face had gone rigid from holding everything in. It was like smiling through a migraine. I didn't tell him what she'd whispered. Not because I was protecting her. Not even to spare him. I didn't say anything because I wanted to remember it, word for word, the way she said it. I wanted to keep it untouched. A clean, sharp memory I could study later. That night, I met Lydia at our usual spot, the coffee shop by the overpass with the chipped mugs and the sleepy barista who never remembers our names. She was already at the corner table, arms crossed, waiting. She could tell something was off before I even opened my coat. "What happened?" she asked, eyes narrowing. I set my cup down too hard and spilled a little. My hands were trembling. I didn't realize it until she reached over and covered one of them with hers. "Vanessa," I said. "Of course." "She told me—" I shook my head, suddenly unsure if it would sound as awful out loud. "She said I'm just the babysitter now." Lydia blinked, then let out a low whistle. "Did she say it in front of Ben?" "No, just me. Like it was some kind of joke." "Jesus." She leaned back, biting her lip. "She thinks she's clever." I stared at the lip of my coffee mug. The foam had collapsed into a flat brown spiral. I took a breath. My voice was steady this time. "Then I'll be cleverer." She looked up at me, startled. "I'm not doing this again," I said. "She wants me to break. But I've seen her play this game. I know her tells." Lydia gave a half smile. "You're not wrong, but be careful. That woman plays long and dirty. I'm done being polite, I said. Outside, the wind was picking up. I could see my reflection in the coffee shop window, a blur behind the glass. Not quite myself, not quite a stranger. Just someone waiting. We all need balance, Ben said. And in that moment, I realized he didn't know which side of the scale he was standing on. It started like a performance. Polite voice, soft lighting, wine already poured. Vanessa sat perched on the edge of our sofa like she was a guest in a hotel lounge, not my daughter's grandmother. Sophie was coloring quietly at the dining table. I stood behind her, a hand resting on her back, just enough pressure to keep me tethered. Vanessa smiled at me, all cheekbones and silk. So, Marianne, we've been talking, and we think it's time to give everyone a little more structure. She didn't look at Ben when she said it. She didn't need to. Ben cleared his throat. Just to make things easier on everyone. You've done so much. We really appreciate it. Vanessa sipped her wine. But Sophie needs consistency. Predictability. We all do. I didn't move. Ben rubbed the back of his neck. So we thought, maybe twice a week? You know, scheduled visits, instead of just dropping by whenever. My hand froze on Sophie's back. He looked at me like he was hoping for a smile, a nod, something that would let him off the hook. I gave him both. Of course, I said. Boundaries? Vanessa beamed like I'd given her a gold star. Later that night, I stood in the toy aisle at Target under those flickering LED lights, trying not to cry next to a wall of talking animals. I picked up a small egg-shaped toy that read stories aloud. Bright red plastic, voice-activated, built-in mic, Bluetooth-enabled, cheap enough to be dismissed, smart enough not to be. The next morning, I gave it to Sophie during our scheduled time. Vanessa hovered in the background like a shadow stitched to the doorway, arms crossed. "Oh, wow!" Sophie gasped. "It talks?" "It listens too," I said, "and we can record stories together. So even when I'm not here, you can press this and hear me read to you." Sophie hugged it like it was treasure. Vanessa gave a tight, empty laugh. Old people and their gadgets. I looked her square in the face. Just keeping up with modern parenting. Her smile slipped, only for a second, but I saw it. A twitch at the corner of her mouth, a flicker of something uncertain in her eyes. I leaned in and brushed Sophie's curls aside to press the record button, my voice light and careful. "Once upon a time," I said, "there was a little fox who lived in the woods with her very curious grandma." It wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. For the next week, I played the part. I followed the rules. I booked my visits through the shared calendar Vanessa set up like a prison schedule. I brought snacks with no sugar. I smiled when spoken to and never stayed past the allotted hour. And when I left, the toy stayed behind. At night, I listened to the files remotely. The ones that synced to my phone through the hidden account I'd set up. I heard Sophie talking to it, singing songs. I heard the clink of dishes, the drone of the television. Then I started hearing Vanessa. She didn't know the toy was still recording after story time. She didn't know it triggered with sound. I heard her correcting Sophie. "No, sweetie, Grandma's house isn't your real home anymore." I heard the edge in her voice when Sophie asked to call me. Then, this morning, something new. Ben's voice, quiet, resigned. "Marianne's not the enemy, Mom." Vanessa, sharper than I've ever heard her. "You need to stop thinking with your guilt and start acting like a father." She paused. "She's going to ruin her." I sat at my kitchen table in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, the toy's soft, blinking light glowing in sync with each clip that played. My tea had gone cold. My fingers were trembling again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something else, something steadier. I reached for my notebook, clicked the pen, and wrote down every word. I wasn't spying. I was listening to the story they thought I'd forgotten how to tell. Every night, after Sophie was asleep and my apartment had gone still, I'd sit at the small kitchen table with the red toy glowing softly beside my phone. The sync happened automatically now, little digital ghosts floating through the Bluetooth connection. Sometimes it was Sophie's giggles. Sometimes her tiny voice reading the stories back to herself, half mumbled, half dreaming. Those were the good nights. Other nights, there was more. The sounds of plates clinking, a television humming low, Vanessa's voice cutting through like a perfume you couldn't wash off. I told myself it was just noise, just background. But then, one night, I heard something that made the air in the room turn solid. A new voice, light, playful, unfamiliar. A woman's voice I didn't recognize. And then Vanessa, laughing. She's so gullible, I could tell her anything. The words hit me like a door slamming. The other woman laughed back. She really believes you like her? Oh, she needs to believe it, Vanessa said. That's the trick. Let them think they're still needed, still part of the picture. It makes the transition easier when they fade out. A clink of glass. More laughter. Then a pause. The sound of Vanessa lowering her voice. She doesn't realize I'm protecting Sophie from her. My throat closed. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear as if that would make it less true. Protecting Sophie from me. For a long time, I just sat there. The refrigerator hummed behind me, and the toy blinked on the table, its little red light winking like it knew something I didn't. I should have cried, but nothing came. Not this time. The tears had dried up somewhere between disbelief and exhaustion. I copied the file to my computer. Labeled it, Vanessa, Call, Balmond, MP3. Then I opened a new folder and named it Truth. The next morning, I called Lydia. She answered on the second ring, still half asleep, voice rough with worry. Marianne, it's early. I have recordings, I said. Of her talking. About me. About Sophie. There was a pause. I could hear her shifting in bed, the sound of sheets rustling. Okay, she said carefully. What kind of recordings? From the toy, it's voice activated. It picks up everything in the room. Jesus, Marianne. Her tone sharpened, not with judgment, but fear. You can't. This could. If Ben found out. I'm not sending them anywhere, I said. Not yet. What are you going to do then? I looked at the blinking toy again, still sitting on the counter like a witness that hadn't decided which side it was on. I'm not seeking revenge, I said slowly. I'm collecting the truth. Lydia exhaled. Proof changes power. You know that? I'm counting on it. For a while, neither of us spoke. I heard her swallow hard, the sound of traffic in the background. Finally, she said, just be careful what you listen for. Some things you can't unhear. After we hung up, I opened the laptop again. The folder sat there, clean and silent, waiting to be filled. One by one, I started importing the older clips, all the bedtime stories, the casual afternoons, the half-heard arguments. I time-stamped each one, wrote little notes in the margins, Vanessa's tone sharp, Sophie quiet afterward. Ben agreeing but uneasy. Laughter at 11:03 p.m. Hours passed. The light shifted. By noon, I had nearly a dozen files labeled and sorted, each one a fragment of a truth they didn't know they'd told me. At some point, my phone buzzed. A text from Ben. Mom's asking if you can bring Sophie's sweater tomorrow. She says you left it here. I stared at the message, thumb hovering. Then I typed back. Of course, I'll bring it myself. Before I closed the laptop, I played the last recording again, the one from that late night with Vanessa's laughter and her cruel little secret. This time, I listened all the way through. At the very end, there was a sound I hadn't noticed before. A man's cough. Faint, but unmistakable. And then, Vanessa's voice again, softer now, saying, Don't worry, she won't ever know. It wasn't Ben's cough. I clicked pause. The red light on the toy flickered once more before going still. And that's when I knew. Someone else had been there. She wasn't sharing Sophie. She was selling her. The first time I saw the photo, I didn't even recognize where it had been taken. Sophie was in a sunlit room I'd never seen before, seated cross-legged on a pale gray cushion, one of her curls caught in the corner of her mouth. Her hands held a smoothie cup, bright pink, with a brand logo angled perfectly toward the camera. The caption read, Morning calm, thanks to All Well Baby Blends. Mom win. It was posted under an account called The Home Nest Life, Vanessa's new influencer project. I stared at the image, thumb frozen above the screen. Sophie's face was clear, smiling, natural, but not private, not sacred. She wasn't Sophie in that moment. She was content. That evening, I asked, lightly, like it wasn't heavy at all. Vanessa was peeling vegetables in our kitchen, acting like she lived there. She's beautiful in the photos, I said, careful not to sound cornered. But don't you think it's a bit soon to have her online like that? With ads? Vanessa didn't look up. It's not like we're putting her on a billboard, Marianne. It's curated, controlled. She's 4. Exactly. Perfect engagement window. She set the knife down and turned toward me. You raised kids in the analog age. You wouldn't get it. This is how families build futures now. Build futures by selling the present. Ben came in from the garage, brushing sawdust off his hands. I looked at him, just once, hoping. She has a point, he said, not meeting my eyes. It's not permanent or anything. It's just a few posts. I felt something small and steady snap in my chest. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, again, the toy beside me, silent. I pulled up Vanessa's page on my laptop and started scrolling. It was slick. A blend of soft colors and empty affirmations. Home isn't a place, it's a lifestyle. Cozy is a choice. Photo after photo of Sophie. In the bath, bubble staged just high enough. At the park, captured mid-laugh, likely told to stay still. On the couch, in her pajamas, reading a book that was clearly unopened. And then I saw it. A photo taken from my living room. Sophie on the rug I'd brought from my old house. The one with the frayed edges and faint coffee stain I'd tried for years to remove. The same rug where I used to read to Ben when he was her age. She was sitting there, holding the red toy in her lap. The one I gave her. The toy I used to listen. The caption read, Thanks to Grandma for watching her while we worked. Grateful for every moment, and for the brands that help make it easier, quas tidy nest boxes that are ADD. I read it 3 times. She'd used me, used Sophie, used our home, turned it into a backdrop for a sponsored post. Not a thank you, not a real moment. Just part of a monetized story. My name wasn't tagged, my face wasn't shown, but I was in it, and I was complicit. I clicked on the brand tag. A monthly delivery box, $89 for linen organizers and pastel toothbrush holders. My granddaughter's image was being traded for affiliate codes. I sat there for a long time, The red toy blinked once, sinking silently. I opened the most recent file. Not Vanessa this time. Not directly. It was Ben's voice. She doesn't have to know. She wouldn't understand anyway. A long pause. Vanessa. She agreed to scheduled time. That's consent, isn't it? He didn't answer. I closed the file, slowly. My hand shook as I shut the laptop. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't just a boundary crossed. It was something deeper. Vanessa wasn't building a future. She was branding one. And Sophie was her product. And now, I was part of the packaging. I thought I was recording vanity. What I caught instead was theft. It happened on a Thursday. Quiet. Almost forgettable. Rain on the roof. The kind of gray that settles into the walls. I was on my couch with a cup of tea that had already gone cold when my phone buzzed. The sync notification from the toy. New file. 47 minutes long. I almost ignored it. Lately, listening had begun to feel like a punishment I kept giving myself, but something, intuition or habit, made me tap play. Static first, then footsteps. The creak of Vanessa's kitchen chair. A click. Maybe a laptop lid. And then her voice, low and fast, not meant to be heard by anyone but the person on the other end of her call. Transfer it before he sees the balance. I froze. Another voice. A man's. Filtered through speakerphone. He's going to notice eventually. You can't keep pulling from the same line item. Then I'll rename it, she said, a faint clatter of keys following. It's all discretionary anyway. A pause. The sound of typing. Vanessa again. This is the last one. After this, we move everything into the new account. I turned the volume up, heart hammering. The toy had picked up the entire exchange, every keystroke, every breath. She wasn't just taking photos. She was taking money. For a full minute, I couldn't move. My pulse was in my throat, my hands slick against the ceramic mug. It wasn't just arrogance or spite anymore. This was criminal. And the evidence had come through a child's toy meant for bedtime stories. I opened the file folder and checked the timestamps. The clip was recorded 2 nights ago, which meant she was still doing it. Still funneling money. Still pretending. I leaned back, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop, then copied the audio to a separate drive. Renamed it Vanessa Transfer Guantuant at P3. Then I made another copy. One for Lydia. Insurance. The message I sent was brief. Need backup. Don't listen yet. Just keep it safe. Her reply came within minutes. You sound scared. What's going on? I typed back. Proof. Then shut my phone off. For the rest of the day, everything felt sharper. Edges of things too defined. Every sound too loud. I went through my chores like I was underwater. My mind kept looping that line. Transfer it before he sees the balance. She was stealing from Ben, from her own family, maybe from his company, maybe from both. At dusk, Lydia called anyway. I didn't answer at first, but she kept ringing until I picked up. You sent me a crime, she said softly. Do you realize what this is? I do now. Jesus, Marianne, this isn't just about custody games or manipulation. If this gets out, she's done. You can destroy her with this. Her words landed heavy, not thrilling, not satisfying, just real. Destruction wasn't what I wanted. I wanted clarity. Justice, maybe, but not fire. I watched the toy on my counter, its red light dim now, waiting. Not yet, I said. She'll destroy herself first. Or she'll destroy you trying to stop her, Lydia said. That woman doesn't play fair. Neither do I whispered. We were quiet for a long time after that. rain still tapping the windows, the low hum of my refrigerator filling the silence. I opened the recording again, just the ending this time. After the call, Vanessa hummed to herself. I could hear her pour something, maybe wine, and type for a while longer. Then, faintly, she spoke again, almost to herself. He'll never check the invoices. He trusts me too much. That's when I heard it, the second voice again, closer now. Male, familiar. Not Ben. He said quietly, "Then we're safe." My stomach dropped. It was the same cough I'd heard on the last recording. Not Ben. Someone else. Someone in on it. I replayed it 3 times to be sure. When the file ended, I sat perfectly still. Then I opened a blank document and started a new list at the top of the page. Money, lies, witnesses. Underneath, I wrote one more word. Motive. Every time I smiled, I pictured the moment it would all collapse. I baked cookies, oatmeal raisin because they were Vanessa's least favorite. She always picked around them, muttering about carbs. But Sophie loved them. I stacked them neatly in a tin lined with parchment, tied it with twine. The kind of thing Pinterest would call rustic. When I showed up at their door, Vanessa looked surprised. Not suspicious. Just pleasantly caught off guard, like I was a neighbor dropping off something warm. "Oh," she said, taking the tin. "That's sweet." "I had extra time this morning," I said with a smile. "And Sophie mentioned she missed my cookies." Vanessa arched an eyebrow but stepped aside to let me in. "She's with her speech blocks. Knock yourself out." The living room was pristine, staged, really. Pillows fluffed to perfection, baskets tucked in every corner. But there was something different now in how Vanessa carried herself. Looser, triumphant. She thought she'd won. I spent the afternoon with Sophie, helping her match shapes, building a tiny town out of foam blocks. I listened closely, recorded nothing. Not everything needed to go in the folder. Sometimes it was enough to observe. By dinner, I was stirring spaghetti sauce and humming to myself like a background character in someone else's life. Vanessa scrolled on her phone nearby, half watching, half smirking. "You've been unusually helpful," she said, barely looking up. I turned from the stove, wiping my hands on a towel. "Just trying to keep the peace." She held my gaze for a beat too long, then smiled. Ben came in from the hallway, his hair damp from a shower, eyes lighting up when he saw the 3 of us. "Wow, smells amazing in here." "She's been wonderful today," Vanessa said, slipping an arm around his waist. "Like a whole new person." He laughed. "You two are finally getting along." I met his eyes, gave him the softest smile I could manage. Vanessa leaned in and whispered, "We're a team now." The bile rose before I could stop it. I turned back to the stove, stirring harder than I needed to. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I stood in the guest bathroom staring at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked like someone's mother, someone safe, harmless. I'd worn a pale cardigan, soft makeup, a pair of earrings I hadn't touched in years. I was a ghost of my former self, but deliberately so. I'd learned a long time ago, people don't look twice at ghosts. They speak freely when they think you've disappeared. I met Lydia the next day on a walk. Her idea, not mine. We followed the trail by the lake, both of us bundled in coats against the wind. She was quiet until we reached the overlook. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said, kicking at a stone. "This isn't theater, Marianne. You're not the narrator. You're in it." "I know." "Then why the act?" I looked out at the water. It was glassy, gray, completely still. "Because if I make a move now," I said, "they can still control the narrative. Say I'm unstable, grieving, Overreacting. You've seen how Ben shuts down when I push too hard. So what's the plan? I smiled faintly. Let her rise. Lydia folded her arms. The longer you wait, the riskier it gets. I turned to her. My voice was calm, steady. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall. Later that evening, as I folded laundry in their guest room, a chore I volunteered for, I heard Vanessa's laugh from downstairs. The smooth, slippery kind of laugh people use when they're talking to someone who matters. I crept to the hallway and paused. Don't worry, she was saying, voice bright. She's playing right into it. Honestly, I think she's finally accepted her role. Took her long enough. A muffled voice responded. The man again. Same cadence, same cough. Then Vanessa. Once the campaign launches, I'll move everything. She won't even notice until it's too late. Campaign. Move everything. Too late. I stepped back, each word searing into my chest like coals. They weren't done. They were just beginning. Some people wear crowns. Others carry the weight of them. I hadn't been asked to help plan Sophie's birthday party. I was told. Vanessa emailed a color-coded itinerary 2 weeks ahead of time. Balloon vendor, gluten-free cake options, arrival times for the media crew, even a Spotify playlist titled Sophie's 5 and Thriving. That morning, I dressed deliberately. Pale blue dress, flat shoes, no jewelry. Soft, quiet tones, easy to overlook. I brought a small gift wrapped in craft paper and tied with twine. Inside was a set of watercolor pencils Sophie had loved when she was 3. I'd kept them tucked away for someday. The backyard had been transformed into a Pinterest hallucination. Fabric banners snapped in the wind, a petting zoo corral took up half the lawn, and a branded step and repeat banner fluttered near the entrance. Ben and Vanessa for County Council in soft serif font, like a luxury home magazine. Sophie wore a pink tulle dress and a plastic tiara that kept sliding over her eye. She didn't seem to mind. She ran between adults, sticky with frosting and joy. Watching her was the only thing that made staying bearable. I smiled, nodded, moved politely among strangers. Lydia was already there, leaning against the fence, oversized sunglasses shading her face. She mouthed, "You okay?" I gave the barest nod. A man with a clipboard gestured toward a cluster of folding chairs by the buffet. Caterers, assistants, and me. I wasn't on the guest list, just the help. I sat, hands folded. No one looked twice. Midway through, Vanessa tapped a mic. Cameras shifted toward her. She wore white, like a bride to her own campaign. "Thank you all for coming," she beamed. "It means the world to celebrate Sophie with our community, and with all of you who've made this year so full of hope." Ben stood beside her, his hand on Sophie's shoulder. He wore the practiced grin of a man who thought everyone was watching for the right reasons. "And of course," Vanessa went on, "we couldn't do any of this without our family support. Especially Marianne, who's been like our live-in nanny these past few months." Laughter. Light, cruel, complicit. I felt it hit before I could stop it. That cold, weightless drop in the stomach. Not anger, not shock. Just that old ache of humiliation, so sharp it almost felt clean. I smiled, tucked my hands under my thighs. Lydia appeared a moment later, kneeling beside my chair as if tying her shoe. "You okay?" she whispered, eyes scanning my face. I looked at her, smile still fixed, eyes glassy. "Oh, I'm perfect." I reached into my tote bag and slid something into her palm. She glanced down. A pocket recorder, blinking red. "I got everything on tape." Her hand closed around it. That was when I heard it. Sophie's voice, small and confused, over the mic. Why is Mommy calling you Nanny? Silence stretched. Vanessa bent down, laughing too brightly, brushing a crumb from Sophie's cheek. It's just a silly joke, sweetheart. You know Marianne's just helping while Mommy works. Ben laughed too. A second too late. Sophie didn't. She looked toward me across the yard, uncertain. My heart cracked just enough to let the light in. Lydia stood first. Let's go. I followed. We cut through the side gate past the catering van. As we walked, Lydia glanced sideways. You want me to leak it? Not yet, I said quietly. She's already climbing. We stopped at the sidewalk. The party noise faded behind us. Distant music, the thrum of voices, the hollow applause of performative joy. What now? She asked. I looked down the street. A sleek black car was idling near the curb, windows dark. I hadn't ordered a car. Neither had Lydia. The driver stepped out, tall, suited, phone in hand. He didn't look toward us, just opened the door and waited. Lydia stiffened. You know him? No. She reached for my arm. Then don't get in. But in that moment, my phone buzzed. One new text. Unknown number. You're not the only one recording. I stared at the screen, then at the car, and I got in. You don't have to set the fire, you just have to light the match. I didn't say a word in the car. The man driving never looked at me, not even in the rear view. No radio, no small talk. Just the soft hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional flick of a turn signal. 10 minutes in, my phone buzzed again. New link, vanessaleaks.com. No sender. Just that. I didn't click. The car dropped me off 2 blocks from Lydia's place. I walked the rest of the way, ears still ringing with Vanessa's laugh and Sophie's confused voice. Inside, Lydia already had the TV on mute. Local news cycling through campaign footage like nothing had happened. She handed me tea without asking. We sat. We waited. I never asked who made the website. I never said it was me. But someone with access to my recorder, someone who knew how to splice a clean 30 seconds of damning audio, uploaded it. Vanessa's voice, clear and unmistakable. She's playing right into it. Once the campaign launches, I'll move everything. She won't even notice until it's too late. Then laughter. Not kind, not even human. No names, no faces. Just the sound. By 11 a.m., it was on Twitter. By noon, TikTok had it looped under dramatic music and makeup tutorials. By 3 p.m., every major parenting brand listed under Vanessa's campaign site had quietly removed their partnership badges. Lydia held up her phone as the sponsor list vanished in real time. Well, she said, sipping her coffee. That was faster than I expected. I said nothing. Across town, I imagined Vanessa pacing, redlining emails, calling legal contacts, trying to plug a leak without knowing where the pipe burst. By dinner time, I was back at their house, stirring another pot of something warm. Ben walked in from the patio, phone clenched in his hand. Marianne. I turned, wooden spoon in hand, apron tied at the waist. Hey. He held out his phone. What is this? On the screen, the clip. 1 million plays and climbing. I blinked slowly. I'm not sure. Should I be? His brow furrowed. Vanessa's been in tears for an hour. She says someone edited her voice, cut it to sound. He hesitated. Malicious. I gently took the phone from him, stared at the screen. The play button hovered in the center, waiting. That's terrible, I murmured. People can do that now? Just fake voices? He nodded, unsure. It's AI or something. Deepfakes. I wouldn't know. I handed it back. I still print recipes. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was easier than thinking. Later, I passed Vanessa in the hallway. Her eyes were puffy, liner smudged to the bone. She didn't speak, just stared like she was trying to see what I really was. I smiled softly. "Rough day?" She didn't answer. That night, Lydia called. "She's unraveling faster than expected," she said. "You sure you want to keep this slow?" "Yes," I said. "It has to look like gravity, not sabotage." There was a pause on the line. "Did you get in that car to meet someone?" "No," I said. "I got in because someone wanted me to." Lydia exhaled. "Be careful. This thing's bigger than her now." The next morning, I found the first strike. My bank card declined at the grocery store, twice. I tried another. Same result. When I got home, I logged in. Every account was locked for suspicious activity. Passwords reset. Two-factor failed. Ben was still at work. Vanessa was in the backyard, talking to someone over speakerphone. Her voice was sharper now, stripped of charm. I didn't interrupt. I went straight to the guest room, opened my laptop. The screen blinked once, then again. Everything was gone. Folder, empty. Backup drive, wiped. Cloud login, denied. Then a single file appeared, a blank document titled, "Stay Down." I stared. Cold crept into my chest. Vanessa had made her move, and I had no proof I'd ever had anything at all. There's nothing more dangerous than a liar who believes her own story. It started with a knock. Too sharp. Too early. I opened the front door in my robe, heart already stuttering. Two officers stood on the porch. One flipped a notepad. The other wore the kind of expression I'd seen before. Polite, detached, and ready to write me into a box. "Marianne Hayes?" I nodded. "We're here regarding a complaint filed by Vanessa Caldwell. She alleges ongoing harassment, unauthorized surveillance, and violation of privacy statutes." I blinked. "Excuse me." "She says you've been recording her without consent, possibly distributing private audio. We'd like to ask you a few questions." I stepped aside mechanically. My hands were steady, but I couldn't feel them. Vanessa sat on the couch across from me 20 minutes later, not in person, but via printed photo. The officer held it up. A still from one of her campaign videos. The smile frozen, the eyes unreadable. "She claims this is part of a larger pattern," the officer said. "You impersonating family, accessing devices, making threats?" I almost laughed. Impersonating family. I'd raised her daughter, taught her to hold a spoon, to say thank you. But all I said was, "That's not true." He didn't push, just made a note. The other officer asked about the leak, the website, the recorder. I shrugged. "I don't know anything about that. I'm not very technical." When they left, I called Lydia. "They're building something," I said. "She's getting ahead of it." Lydia didn't hesitate. "Time to go on the record." "No," I said quietly. "Time to protect the record." I dug into the lining of my travel bag, the one I kept zipped at the back of the closet. Inside was a drive, one she didn't know existed. Triple encrypted. Original files. Raw footage. Time-stamped. "If anything happens to me," I said, placing it in Lydia's palm, "this clears me and buries her." Her mouth tightened. "That's not comforting, Marianne. It's not meant to be." The next blow came that evening. Ben. He stood in the kitchen, arms folded, face unreadable. Sophie had already gone to bed. Vanessa, I assumed, was upstairs, or watching from somewhere. He spoke first. "The police came to the office today." "I know. They showed me statements. Vanessa said you've been following her, taking things, recording her without her consent." "Ben?" His voice sharpened. She says you threatened her, that you told her you'd destroy her campaign. I stared at him. You believe that? He didn't answer, just looked away, jaw tight. I stepped forward. Ben, please, you know me. You know who I am. He shook his head once, slowly. I don't know what I know anymore, but you crossed a line, Mom. And I can't protect you if this goes further. He left me standing there. I didn't sleep, just sat in the guest bed, hands still, heart racing. I thought of all the ways this could end, how easy it would be for her to win, not because she was smart, but because she sounded like the kind of woman people trusted. 2 days passed before I got the call. Detective Ruiz. He asked to meet in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the precinct. Neutral ground, no paper trail. He ordered tea. Black, no sugar. Sat across from me and pulled out a folder. I'm not supposed to show you this, he said, but I hate being lied to. Inside were Vanessa's sworn statements, her timeline, her claims. I didn't speak. He flipped to the next page. Timestamps from internal surveillance. She says you accessed her computer on May 9th. You were at a physical therapy clinic across town. Another page. She says you made a threat on June 2nd. You were at the lake with Sophie. Witnessed by 5 people. He leaned forward, voice low. She's not good at covering her tracks. I swallowed. So what now? He closed the folder, looked me in the eye. Don't worry, Mrs. Hayes. Then he leaned even closer, almost smiling. I think your daughter-in-law just buried herself. But as he stood to leave, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. No number. I played it. Vanessa's voice, clipped and breathless. You think you're ahead, but I haven't even started. I looked out of the window. It was starting to rain. Sometimes the truth doesn't break the surface. It rots it from underneath. I didn't return Detective Ruiz's calls. Not because I didn't want to, because I needed them to think I was unraveling. I stayed quiet, small. I moved through the house like a guest afraid of overstaying. I left dishes in the sink, folded Sophie's pajamas with trembling hands, skipped makeup, ate less, stared out windows longer than necessary. Vanessa began whispering on the phone again, but this time she wasn't subtle. She's losing it, I overheard. I caught her reading Sophie's school emails. If she tries anything, I'll have her committed. It was a performance. She knew I was listening. Good. Let her feel in control. That's when she got sloppy. Ruiz did what he said he would. He didn't rush. He tracked, watched, waited. He called Lydia instead of me, told her about a wire transfer, small enough to avoid automatic detection, large enough to catch his eye once he was looking. $9,200 moved from a dormant project account in Ben's name to a shell company registered under Wellness Influence and Co-Assume, a business Vanessa had conveniently opened 3 months before her first brand partnership. It wasn't the amount. It was the pattern. Small withdrawals, obfuscated notes. A maze of redirection that all led back to the same quiet purpose, funneling his company's money into her personal brand. Ruiz's words to Lydia were blunt. She's laundering it through herself. By Thursday, the whispers started in town. Lydia handled them masterfully. Oh, Marianne, she's grieving, trying to be helpful, poor thing. She lost her husband, and now she's just trying to stay close to her granddaughter. She was always too polite to say anything, but I heard Vanessa has not been easy to live with. The mothers at preschool softened first, then the church ladies, then the local paper editor, who reshared a photo of me holding Sophie at last year's fundraiser, long before Vanessa started chasing headlines. Sympathy moves like fog. It clings. Even Ben noticed. He came home late, jacket slung over one shoulder, jaw tight. I watched him stare at the mail pile. Bills, campaign flyers, a check from a brand that no longer wanted Vanessa's name on their mailing list. He flipped through his phone, paused, frowned, then turned toward the stairs. "Vanessa," he called, voice even. "Can you come down here?" I stayed in the kitchen, still, listening. She came fast. Too fast. He held up his phone. "There's a hole in the consulting fund," he said. 12,000, maybe more. I checked the ledger. "I don't recognize these withdrawals." Her voice lifted, tight and sharp. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking." "You're asking me because your mother's poisoned you. She's been twisting things for months." Ben was quiet. Then, "That accounts under my name. If anything's off, I'm liable." Her voice cracked. "You think I'd steal from you?" "I think I don't know what to think anymore." And then came the scream. Not high, not loud, but raw, tearing. "Your mother is ruining us!" I flinched from the sound, not because I was afraid, because I knew it wasn't aimed at him. It was aimed at the moment she realized she'd lost control. He didn't shout back, just left. Slammed the front door so hard it shook the glass. She stomped upstairs. Her heels clacked against the wood like punctuation marks. That night, the guest room door creaked open. Sophie padded in barefoot, dragging a blanket behind her. "Can I sleep here?" I nodded. Pulled back the covers. She curled beside me, thumb in her mouth, eyes wide. "Mommy says you make everything worse." I stroked her hair. "Well," I said gently, "some people lie when they're scared." Outside, headlights flicked across the wall. I went to the window. A dark sedan idled across the street. Ruiz stepped out, walked to the porch, folder in hand. A warrant. He didn't ring the bell. Not yet. But the lie was about to burst. The truth doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. It happened just after dawn. The light hadn't even cracked through the curtains when I heard it. Not the knock this time, but tires crunching on gravel, the heavy thump of doors opening in sequence. When I pulled the bedroom curtain back, there were 3 police cruisers out front, one unmarked. Officers moved with quiet coordination. No sirens, no shouting. Just presence. Sophie still slept beside me, curled into a crescent. I slipped from bed, tucked the blanket tighter around her, and stepped into the hallway. Vanessa's voice rose seconds later. "You can't come in here. This is my house." Doors slammed. Footsteps thundered upstairs. Then Ruiz's voice, calm and clipped. "We have a warrant, Mrs. Caldwell. Do not obstruct." She shouted something else, garbled, indignant. Then nothing. I didn't move until I heard the handcuffs click. I dressed quietly. Jeans, flat shoes, a gray sweater with loose sleeves. I went into Sophie's room and began packing her school bag. Lunch, inhaler, raincoat, her bunny. I didn't rush. By the time I stepped out the front door, a small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, phones out, pajamas under coats. Lydia stood near the curb, coffee in hand, nodding slightly when she saw me. Vanessa was already in the back of the cruiser, her eyes red, face pale beneath the foundation she hadn't had time to finish. Her wrists were cuffed. One ankle was bare. News vans were pulling up now. Fast. 2 women in windbreakers ran to the grass, one speaking into her mic as a cameraman framed the shot. Breaking. Local influencer and county council candidate Vanessa Caldwell has been arrested on felony charges including wire fraud, embezzlement, and exploitation of a minor in campaign materials. I crossed the driveway slowly, Sophie's backpack slung over one shoulder. The officer at the cruiser opened the passenger door for me to pass. That's when Vanessa saw me. Her whole body lurched forward, even though the cuffs pinned her. Her voice cracked across the hood of the car. "You did this." I didn't stop walking, just met her eyes and said, "No, dear. You recorded it yourself." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Only a sound, somewhere between a gasp and a growl. I reached Lydia's car. She opened the back door without a word. Sophie climbed in, still sleepy, still clutching her bunny. Lydia leaned closer, eyes sparkling beneath her sunglasses. "That," she whispered, "was justice with frosting." I didn't smile. Not yet. Ben appeared on the porch then, his shirt half-buttoned, hair askew, like he'd run a hand through it 50 times. He watched them drive her away, never said a word. I didn't pity him, but I did wonder if he finally heard her laugh for what it really was. We drove in silence for a few minutes before Sophie's voice broke through. "Where's Mommy going?" I turned in my seat, reached back to touch her knee. "She's going somewhere to fix some things," I said softly. "Grown-up things. But you're going to stay with me for a little while. That sound okay?" She nodded. Her eyes were still wide, but calm. "Will there be cookies?" Lydia chuckled. "You bet there will be cookies." When we pulled up in front of Lydia's house, the sun had fully crested the trees. Gold light spilled across the sidewalk. Birds chattered in the hedges. The world hadn't ended. It had only shifted. I helped Sophie out of the car, her small hand wrapped around two of my fingers. She skipped once. Just once. Then fell into step beside me. Inside, Lydia put the kettle on. I set Sophie up with crayons. Only then did I sit, breathe, and let my hands tremble. But it wasn't over. Because as I reached for my tea, my phone lit up with a single notification. New email. Subject: Archive access alert sender. Unknown. You missed something. My blood ran cold. Forgiveness doesn't erase the wound. It just stops you from bleeding on everyone else. 3 days after the arrest, Ben showed up unannounced. Lydia's street was quiet, washed in late afternoon light. Sophie was inside, painting rainbows on printer paper while a cartoon hummed softly in the background. I was in the garden, pruning what was left of Lydia's roses, when I heard the car door. I didn't turn, just said, "She's napping." He didn't answer right away. His footsteps crunched closer through the gravel. When I finally looked up, he was standing there in a wrinkled dress shirt, tie half loosened, eyes hollow. "Mom," he said quietly, "I need to talk." I set down the shears. "You usually only need to talk when it's too late to listen." He flinched, just slightly. "I didn't see her for what she was." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "You saw her. You just looked away." He nodded. Once, sharp, like a confession. "I thought she just needed understanding. I thought she was ambitious, not—" He stopped, words snagging. "Not manipulative, not dangerous." I didn't fill the silence. It wasn't mine to fill. "I should have protected Sophie," he went on. "From the cameras, from the constant noise, from all of it. I thought it was harmless. But she—" His voice broke. He swallowed hard. "She made Sophie into a prop. And I let her." There it was, the sentence that cost him sleep. He sank onto the garden bench, elbows on his knees, head bowed. His shoulders trembled once before he caught himself. "I'm sorry," he said, not looking at me, "for not believing you, for saying you crossed lines, for letting her—" He gestured vaguely toward the air. "For everything." The apology landed like glass settling on a table. fragile, dangerous, and necessary. I sat beside him. The smell of soil and cut petals filled the space between us. I don't want your apology, I said gently. I want your clarity. He looked up, eyes red. What do you mean? Start by being a father, I said, not a husband to a ghost. He winced. I reached over, brushed a stray leaf from his sleeve. You can rebuild a career. You can't rebuild a child. Sophie doesn't need a man carrying guilt around like luggage. She needs you to show her what truth looks like when it hurts. He blinked, the tears finally spilling. I don't deserve her, he whispered. Then earn her, I said. Every day. That's what fathers do. We sat there as the light shifted from gold to blue. The hum of cars passed. A dog barked 2 houses down, and somewhere inside, Sophie laughed at something on TV. The kind of laugh that sounded like freedom. When Ben finally stood, he looked taller, though nothing about his body had changed. I'll fix it, he said. Not for the cameras, for her. I nodded. Good. He hesitated at the gate. Do you hate me? I smiled, tired, small, honest. No, Ben, you're just late, but you showed up. That's more than most. He nodded once, eyes glinting wet. Then he left. Lydia appeared from the porch, 2 mugs in hand. That was civilized, she said. He's not the enemy, I said quietly. He's collateral. She handed me a mug, steam curling between us. You could have destroyed him too, she said. He made it easy. I stared out over the yard. I only wanted to save Sophie. Lydia studied me for a long moment. You sure that's all you wanted? I didn't answer, because just then my phone vibrated in my pocket. Another email. Same unknown address. Subject: Inheritance Protocol, Caldwell Estate. Message: If she falls, you fall with her. The sun dipped below the fence line, shadows crawling across the roses. It wasn't over. Not yet. The louder the performance, the more damning the echo. The courtroom smelled like old paper and floor polish, nothing cinematic about it. Just harsh fluorescence, tight suits, and the low murmur of attorneys arranging ruin in manila folders. Vanessa sat at the defense table in a navy blazer 2 sizes too big. The kind they loan to people who no longer fit the image they built. Her hair was flat, her cheekbones less sharp without contouring, but her eyes, those were still dangerous. She didn't look at me when I entered. She looked at Ben. He sat 1 row ahead, hands knotted between his knees, his body pulled so tight it looked like it hurt. The proceedings started quietly. Her lawyer argued predictably. The central evidence in this case, the audio clips and digital transfers, were obtained without consent, in violation of state and federal privacy law. We ask that they be suppressed. He looked confident, like someone who'd cleaned up worse messes for wealthier clients. The prosecutor glanced at Ruiz. The detective stood from the gallery like he'd been waiting all morning for this exact moment. He held up a small white drive. This, he said, was not collected by Mrs. Hayes. It was pulled from Mrs. Caldwell's own cloud archive. The defense attorney scoffed. Illegally accessed. No, Ruiz said calmly. Voluntarily uploaded, public-facing backups. For her vlog. He clicked a remote. On the mounted screen behind the bench, a video loaded. Vanessa's voice chirped from the speakers. Bright, sugary, rehearsed. Hey, mamas! I just wanted to share a little behind the scenes from our campaign weekend. It was chaos, but real motherhood is never polished, right? The camera wobbled, then steadied on her face. She winked. Cut. The next clip began. Audio only. Her voice dropped an octave, flat, cold. I told them the money was for speech therapy, but honestly, it paid for the new kitchen lights. Whatever. It's all part of the story. Another cut. Laughter. Most of these brands don't care about ethics. They just want the aesthetic. You slap a kid in a pastel hoodie and talk about balance, they'll write the check before you hit upload. The room went still. Ben's shoulders collapsed forward like someone had cut a string. Vanessa's face turned to stone. "This isn't real," her lawyer barked. "This could have been edited." "It wasn't," Ruiz said. "It's time-stamped, metadata verified, hosted on her own social archive. Your client built a career on transparency. Turns out she was too good at it." The judge leaned back. A long pause. Then, "Motion to suppress is denied. Recordings are admissible." Vanessa finally turned to me. For a moment, I saw something behind the hatred in her eyes. Not fear. Not regret. Just disbelief. She had always believed she'd be the one telling the story. The gavel fell. The sentence was swift. 5 years. Fraud. False charity reporting. Exploitation of a minor. The noise after was white. The shuffle of papers. The rustle of coats. The buzz of courtroom air. Outside, Ben stood frozen on the steps. He looked up as I approached. "I thought I'd seen the worst of it," he said hoarsely. "But those recordings?" "She documented her own downfall," I said gently. "Like a scrapbook." He swallowed, eyes glassy. "Was any of it real?" I looked at him, at the man who had once called her brilliant. "Yes," I said. "The manipulation, that was real." He didn't speak again. Lydia appeared beside me, arms crossed, sunglasses perched like armor. "That was brutal," she said under her breath. "You sure you don't want a champagne breakfast?" I shook my head. Too early. Ben stayed on the steps. I turned to go. But as I reached the curb, I leaned toward Lydia. "Poetic symmetry, isn't it?" She raised an eyebrow. "What?" "She used a fake version of motherhood to sell lies," I said. "And the truth, her real voice, took her down." Lydia nodded slowly. "Still think it's over?" I opened my phone. New message. No contact. Subject. Final request. Check the safe. My breath caught. I knew which safe, and I knew exactly what she had locked away. "You don't get the life you imagined. You get the one you choose to build." It was spring again by the time the paperwork went through. I sat across from the judge, hand wrapped around Sophie's tiny fingers. She wore a pale yellow dress with sunflowers stitched along the hem and a barrette shaped like a crayon. I'd braided her hair that morning, more carefully than I'd braided anything in years. The courtroom wasn't dramatic this time. No cameras, no reporters, just signatures and solemn nods. "Guardianship is hereby transferred to Marianne Hayes," the judge said, smiling down at Sophie. "I trust you'll continue doing what's clearly in this child's best interest." Sophie looked up at me, wide-eyed. "Does this mean you're my real grandma now?" I squeezed her hand. "I always was." Later that week, Lydia insisted we mark the occasion with cake. "No courtroom in this country has enough frosting," she said. But I had other plans. The old classroom sat empty behind the community church, shuttered since before COVID. Dust clung to the corners, and the chalkboards had cracked from heat and time. But the light was still good, and the bones of the place still remembered children. We scrubbed for days. Ben brought tools, fixed the loose window frames, patched the roof. He didn't talk much, but he showed up early and stayed late. Sometimes Sophie came with us, sitting cross-legged with a clipboard, taking notes on everything we did. On the morning we reopened, she helped me hang a painted sign by the door. the little lantern project for kids who need a little more light. That first week we had 6 students, then 9, then 12. Some were homeschooled. Some were recovering from anxiety, grief, isolation. Parents said they came for the crafts, but stayed because someone was finally listening. I ran it on donations, borrowed supplies, and a quiet conviction that not everything needed to be big to be meaningful. Lydia stopped by one afternoon, leaned in the doorway with a coffee and sunglasses. "You know, the local paper wants to run a piece on you." I arched a brow. She grinned. "The headline writes itself. Grandma Vigilante starts healing center." "I prefer teacher." Sophie was at the chalkboard drawing a tree with birds tucked into its branches. Ben sat nearby, sorting puzzles with 2 other children. It didn't look like revenge. It looked like repair. That night, after Sophie fell asleep, face smudged with marker, hair damp from bathwater, I sat in the living room and finally opened the safe. The message hadn't left my mind. "Check the safe." Inside was one envelope. My name written in Vanessa's familiar looping script. No USB, no confession. Just a single folded sheet. This was never about Sophie. It was about being seen. You were always better at disappearing. No signature, no apology. Just one last attempt at control, and a final confirmation of who she really was. I slid the note back into the envelope and tucked it into the back of my bookshelf, next to my wedding photo and a copy of Charlotte's Web. Some things didn't need to be burned, just buried. The next morning, Sophie handed me a drawing, crayon on thick white paper. 3 figures standing under a rainbow. One tall, one medium, one small. I looked closer. I had glasses. Ben had a hammer. Sophie held a heart. She labeled it carefully, "My family." I blinked back the sting in my eyes and pulled her close. "You forgot one thing," I said gently. She frowned. "What?" "There's no roof over our heads." She looked at the picture, then back at me. "We don't need one," she said with a shrug. "We're already safe." And in that moment, I believed her. But safety, I'd learned, was always temporary. Because as I pinned the picture to the fridge, my phone buzzed again. New message. Subject: Final custody motion filed. Petitioner: Vanessa Caldwell. Status: accepted for review. And just like that, the storm turned back toward us. She was half right. I'm the babysitter of what she lost, a child's love and a life worth keeping. The folding chairs squeaked as families shuffled into the multi-purpose room, arms full of flowers, tissue packets, and glittered signs that read, "We did it." It smelled like orange juice, dry erase markers, and whatever was left of this morning's muffins. Sophie's kindergarten graduation wasn't a grand affair. No gowns, no stage lights, just a row of folding tables pushed together. A hand-drawn paper banner that said, "Moving up and moving on," and sunlight pouring through windows that had been cleaned, badly, by volunteers. I sat front row, knees angled to the side, camera already rolling in my lap. Lydia sat beside me, wiping under her sunglasses even before the first name was called. Ben was in the second row, tie straight, eyes locked on Sophie like he might lose her if he blinked too long. We didn't talk about the custody appeal anymore. It had quietly disappeared 2 weeks after it was filed. Withdrawn, according to the court clerk. No explanation, no warning. Ben never asked where it went. I never asked why Vanessa had tried at all. Now Sophie stood at the edge of the line, fidgeting with her shoelaces. Her hair was up in 2 proud puffs, her dress dotted with tiny blue stars. "And now," the principal said, tapping the mic, We'd like to recognize one of our volunteers who's gone above and beyond this year. From organizing read aloud mornings to launching the Little Lantern Project, she's been a guiding light for so many of our kids. Lydia squeezed my hand. Please join me in celebrating our Volunteer of the Year, Mrs. Marianne Hayes. The applause started small, but it grew. I stood, slowly, smiled, tilted my chin toward the crowd, toward Sophie, who beamed at me like I had hung the moon herself. I didn't wave. I just pressed a hand to my heart. In the audience, Ben stood too, not out of obligation, but something else. Gratitude, maybe even awe. Lydia tilted her phone sideways, filming with one hand, blotting tears with the other. The principal kept speaking, but the words blurred. My eyes found Sophie's again. She gave me a thumbs up, our quiet signal. I smiled back. A year ago, I'd stood in a house that didn't want me, watching a woman rehearse a life she'd stolen in pieces. I'd been careful, patient, invisible when I had to be. Vanessa's name had stopped appearing in headlines months ago. The articles were archived now, buried beneath fresh scandals and celebrity divorces. When people mentioned her at all, it was usually in cautionary tones. Wasn't she that mom influencer who got arrested? Followed by shrugs and silence. Her account was inactive, her podcast gone, her brand partnerships dissolved, and in her absence, the story shifted. No one called me the babysitter anymore. I took my seat again, breathing evenly, camera still rolling. The children began to sing, something about sunshine and new beginnings. Off-key, joyful, pure. Sophie sang with her whole face. She had my mother's smile and Ben's stubborn chin. She stood on her own now, but she looked at me like I was still the lighthouse in her sea. I closed my eyes for a moment, just long enough to remember. I remembered what Vanessa had said that day in the kitchen, months before everything cracked. "You're just the babysitter," she'd sneered, her voice syruped with cruelty. Temporary, replaceable. But there were some things you couldn't fake your way into. A child's trust. A quiet room full of parents clapping for the woman who stayed. A handmade rainbow taped to the fridge that read, "My family." No, I wasn't the mother. But I wasn't the babysitter either. She was half right. I'm the babysitter of what she lost. A child's love. And a life worth keeping. Fade to black.